us today can still view the program at a later time on our AARP California YouTube channel. Please click Got It when it appears on your screen. For many Asian American and Pacific Islanders, the way we say hello, I care about you, and I love you can be summed up as have you eaten yet? Food can be a powerful connection that can bridge time and generations as recipes and cooking traditions are passed down. It can heal and nurture the soul, but it can also speak, sharing culture, identity, resiliency, and strength. Food can evoke lifelong memories and stories. Today, we're going to first share with you the award-winning documentary Fugetsu-Do. Then you will meet Brian Kito of Fugetsu-Do and Kaia Rose, the filmmaker. I promise you'll be very hungry after seeing the film too. Kaia, please start the film.
I want to say there's only two people in Tokyo that are third generation owners of their business. And one's a mortician and the other's me. Well, Fugetsu-Do is a Japanese confectionery. We specialize in mochi. We are a family-owned business. You look at the generations of employees that have worked for us and how all these employees have become part of the family. But the store itself has this overlying passion to exist. You know, it wants to survive, and that's why it's still here. It's not just a little candy store. It has connections to our culture and to our religion. Grandpa had gone to Tokyo from Gifu and studied how to make Japanese pastries under a company named Fugetsu-Do. Same name, but back in those days, there were many stores named Fugetsu-Do. They are all different owners at the time, but they all used the word synonymous with wagashi store or mochi store. There are two basic kinds of pastries that we make, which is all under the name of wagashi. It's either manju or mochigashi. Manju is made with cake flour, so that's yaki manju. The one that's baked, we call that kuri manju. Mochigashi, on the other hand, is made with sweet rice flour or rice flour, and it generally has a sweet bean paste inside of it. So uguisu mochi, kusa mochi, pink mochi. And then to trick you all together, after that, we have one that's called kuzu manju. It's heated and steamed, but it has no cake flour in it. So there's exceptions here and there, yeah. My grandfather was the first Japanese confectioner in the United States. This one cracker that he made, it was sweet. He'd fold it up like a taco and put a paper haiku poem inside and then bend the sides down. And that's the predecessor to what we know as the fortune cookie. In 1903, my grandfather and my grandmother, they opened the store. You know, they settled here because it was an area that nobody wanted to develop. Back in the day, this is the only place you can get Japanese food. You didn't get tofu at Ralph's Market. You didn't get, you didn't get mochi at, Vaughn's. This community was just forming. And Grandma had this reputation of welcoming people at the port. And my father kind of has the same. I've heard stories from younger first-generation Japanese men that met my father in the bars, and that my dad took him under his wing, tried to teach him how to adapt to the United States. I guess that's where I get it. It's been passed down through our family to be very helpful and be kind to those that need help. When the talk came about me taking over the store, I wanted to make it very clear with my dad. Well, Dad, how long would be long enough? What if I do want to change careers? 10 years down the line, could I make a change if I decided this wasn't for me? 15 years or how about the 100th anniversary? He says, yeah, 100 years is enough. The first year I took over the store, I did well. The sign that was here during my grandfather's days had already been moved from outside to the inside our showcase. The museum wanted to know if I would donate it. Immediately after that, things started turning on me. Things started turning on the entire community here in downtown. You know, with the riots and 9/11, and nobody wanted to come downtown near the high-rise buildings. And at one point, I was the only store on half of this block. This went on for like quite a while, and I went through an photo album that was from our 70th anniversary. This album had a page of a photo of the sign, and in Japanese he wrote, "This sign knows everything." It dawned on me that if the sign does have a spirit, I got to go back and get it. So I went back to the museum and asked if they would release it back to me, which they did. And sure enough, you know, things started changing after I brought it back to the store. The sign was taken, the only piece that was taken with them to Heart Mountain, and they came back with it. We weren't told very much about camp growing up. People would come in our stores always say, "Oh, I know your mom and dad from camp." And we say, "Yeah, oh, okay," with no perception of what camp must have been like. But if you go to Heart Mountain, you see how desolate it is. You can see how windy it gets, the dust, how cold it must be in the winter, how hot it gets in the summer. They had one barracks, communal living with the entire family in one room, with boards that had gaps in them. My mother, who rarely complains about anything, she loves sweets. I remember her saying, "I just hated bread pudding." And that was the only sweet thing that they had for dessert, and until Grandpa started producing mochi in camp. I've heard the stories and talked firsthand to people that said, "Well, yeah, when I was a little girl, I'd be told to go to so-and-so's family's barracks and pick up sugar from them on the way to Mr. Kito." And so they would have these regular people that would give Grandpa a certain portion of their sugar ration in order for him to produce the manju. They tried to make life as normal as possible when they were in camp. Once you see the families setting up Boy Scout troops, setting up baseball leagues, you start to realize that, yeah, they're Japanese, but they're living an American life here. These are all American citizens. Both my mom and dad were American citizens. They were married in 1945 in Cody. Mom did not have a wedding dress on her wedding day. They never told us this stuff when we were children. Up and through high school, we didn't know nothing. You know, they kept it all from us to make sure that we were American first. They basically shut down the culture in a way. Now, in my case, because of the business, I had no choice but to revert back into the culture, because of course it's surrounded by our culture. And my grandfather and my father, the only place they knew was LA. And after the war, they actually slept at the Koya-san Temple, which is right here on First Street, before Dad was able to find work and get enough money to start up the business again. They had to live the American dream twice, once before World War II and once after. You would hope that something that happened to the Japanese American would never happen again, and it seems like so commonplace to know that, and yet it's aggravating to think that we're even getting close to it at all, even considering part of it. It is a quite sensitive issue for us, because of course we're going to come to the rescue. The business climate here in Little Tokyo is definitely not a certainty right now because of the changes of property values and things down here, but I've been through this before. We've had a rough history. I must have gone through about a good 17, 18-year period where Little Tokyo was a really tough place to do business. I don't know how many times I wanted to close the store. So for us to survive that, I don't know how we did, but we did. But it was painful. And yet it would have been more painful to give up on the store. My son is 17 years old. He's been in the store like every day from the time he was born till the time he was 7. And he's gotten the same feeling of the store and all the people that work in there as I did when I was younger. He's decided he wanted to do the business when he was about 7. He says, I'm going to take it over. And I thought by now he would maybe have some reservations, but no, he's still committed to running the store. I don't think Grandpa probably ever imagined that it would go this long. And when I look at, friends of ours that have businesses that are 40, 50 years old, I think, wow, that's a long time, And then I have to stop to think, we're at 100 and over 100 years now, over 110. I thought I was going to be out of here at 100th anniversary. I probably had a window to escape at one point, but I didn't take it. In hindsight, yeah, I guess I'm glad I did not. But, you always wonder too, is like, what if I did not take over the store? Would life be easier or harder for me? I suspect it would be easier, but then again, it became part of my blood to not only protect my store, but to protect the community. People will come and marvel, it looks the same, because we have generation after generation of customers. Now we're talking about grandmother and grandfather's age coming to our store, and it's kind of a location of comfort, because they remember that store when they were kids, and they bring their grandkids, and their grandkids are getting the same thing. And I realize that, it's like 5 generations, and getting back to that spirit issue of this store has a spirit of its own. Well, that's part of it. The memory is still alive.
Wow, what a beautiful film. I bet everyone's hungry right now. Well, it's now my pleasure to introduce to you Kaia Rose and Brian Kito. Kaia Rose is an award-winning filmmaker dedicated to impactful storytelling. She has directed, produced, and edited films like Stamp Our Story, about a grassroots campaign for a U.S. postage stamp honoring Japanese-American World War II soldiers. And of course, Fugetsu-Do, the film you just saw, a portrait of a historic Japanese sweet shop in Los Angeles, both widely recognized at film festivals. She created Climate Countdown, an acclaimed web series exploring climate solutions, and has produced videos for the United Nations, Juilliard, and the World Bank. As a lead producer at the BAFTA-winning studio Arthur Cox, she worked on projects for Disney Junior, Aardman, and the BBC. She currently leads multimedia content at the World Bank's Connect for Climate program. And Brian Kito, master manju confectioner and third-generation owner, Brian Kito brings his family's artistry to you by creating traditional as well as contemporary sweets like the infamous strawberry-flavored mochi with peanut butter filling. Fugetsu-Do has been a family-owned and operated confectionery in Little Tokyo since 1903. Japanese rice cakes, more commonly known as mochi and manju, filled with beans and rice, are the staple. The shop, which is currently operated by Brian, is located on East First Street in the heart of the historic district of Little Tokyo. Welcome, Kaia and Brian. We are so excited to have you. Kaia, let's first talk to you about how did you get connected to Fugetsu-Do? I understand it started when you were very young.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to get to watch this film with an audience again, and particularly with Brian and to do a Q&A with Brian. I think we released the film about 5 years ago now, and we actually did it during the pandemic, so we were doing the festival route on Zoom quite a lot, so it's a good harkening back. So yeah, I'm from Southern California, just Santa Barbara County, and my mom is from Los Angeles. And actually, as a very small child, we used to drive through San Francisco on the way to visit my grandmother, and we used to go to Kyoto, and I got hooked then. And then as a teenager, I discovered Fugetsu-Do in downtown LA, which was much closer. And it was one of those things that I didn't even quite know what the idea was, but there was something that drew me into the shop. And I couldn't really define it until I was probably about halfway through the editing process for the film of what exactly it was that made me want to make the film. But there's something really special about that store. I don't know, I'm sure that some of the audience has been there before. For those that haven't had the chance, I hope that you get to visit it soon. There's something that feels kind of magical, and I think it's the history, it's the fact that it hasn't changed much, but it holds all of these memories. And then inside each one of these, delicious sweet treats, it's all of the history is kind of wrapped inside of it. And there was something that made me just curious to want to know more. And then one time I went to the shop with my mom, who knew a bit more about the history than I did, and Brian served us, and she kind of poked me and said, "That's Brian." And we started chatting. Of course, Brian's an expert storyteller, and I can't remember what story you told Brian, but it was wonderful. And he has that resonant voice, that kind of radio voice, and I was like, oh, this could work.
So you knew early
And so
on that he had a story to tell. He had a really
yeah,
tactful story to share.
yeah, absolutely. And I wasn't sure exactly where it was going to take us, but the film kind of evolved over a number of years. I did the audio interview with Brian first, and I remember, Brian, when you said that line about "this sign knows everything," I was like, okay, there's a film here. I knew there was a reason I wanted to make a film. That was the kind of encapsulated everything.
Brian, you had a really important message in this film, and that is the importance of keeping the culture and craft of Japanese sweet making alive. You went through some rough patches over the years. I mean, the economy is one of those things that we never can predict, as the ups and downs of the economy. Why was it so important for you to persevere and to keep the shop going?
Well, if you look at the history of the store and what my grandfather had gone through and what my father had gone through, one is the Great Depression, the other one, World War II, and restarting the store after World War II. No matter what hardships come at me, they seem kind of trivial compared to those two. And so, but I've been through my own. Now I've been through COVID. I've been through the riots of '92, and now 9/11. And so, but at the time that I kept going and kept going, it was basically because of thinking that whatever the hardships we're looking at is not as bad as what Grandpa and Dad went through.
Of course, one of the concerns I think every business owner has is continuity. And with the perils that you faced through the years, there were some doubts as to whether you would continue. What does it mean to you to have your son now committed to continuing the store and continuing the tradition and keeping and staying in Little Tokyo?
Well, it's a very nice feeling to have him in the shop. He's been apprenticing since he graduated from high school. He's actually leaving tonight for Japan to do an internship in Sendai at a large Japanese confectionery. and then I'll be joining him in 2 weeks. But having him come into the shop, of course, that's the legacy. And not to put too much more pressure on him that he already has, looking at 121 years of operation, it's still up to him. And he's very skilled. He's probably more skilled at his age than I was, and maybe that's because he had a better teacher. It was me. But I think he has what it takes to do it. And like I said, his hands are almost identical to mine and my dad's. And so he does have the skills, natural skills.
Well, we met Corey briefly in the film, and what is at the heart of his reasoning to commit at his age, I mean, at 17, to want to do this and to perpetuate the store? It seems that we have many stores today, family-owned businesses, restaurants, and so forth, owned by Asian American families that are not continuing because the second generation doesn't want to continue in that line of work.
Sure. Well, he's been exposed to the store at a young age. He's very natural within the factory area. It comes, it's something that you have to learn if you've never grown up in it. And he's natural. He is now 24 years old, although he was 17 when the film was filmed. But he's gone through some different changes since the time he graduated from high school. And when he was 17 is the first year, I take it back, 16, was the first year that he made it through our New Year's rush. And it's like 4 days of hell. We're almost going 24 hours a day. And he had tried it at 14 and he did one day and he couldn't come back for the next 2-3 days because he was so sore. And then the next year he did 3 days, but he couldn't wake up for the final bell on the 31st. And then when he was 16, he made it all the way through. And so at 17, he felt very accomplished. And so he also proved to me that, he has what it takes to be able to suffer through that. Now, I have a couple of cousins on this viewing today too. So they'll know too, because they used to come and help us during that Hell Week. And I think he knows that when you make it through that Hell Week just before New Year's, at the end of that's all that hard work, you feel very accomplished. And he has that feeling now.
One thing you pointed out, Brian, is that your grandfather, of course, made the mochi in camp at Heart Mountain. And Kaia, you went to Heart Mountain and you wove that history into your film. Do you think that we need films like yours to help remind people the deep history of food and culture and the suffering of what happened during World War II, that story needs to be kept alive for future generations?
Absolutely. I think you can't underestimate the kind of holding those memories, which I think is part of what the store is doing by continuing and that what Ryan is talking about, that legacy and having the family continue to hold the store continue to kind of make the same items and the same pictures on the walls and the same drawers. All of that keeps the memory alive, what Brian says in the film, I think. And I think there's a lot. I mean, Brian's story is somewhat unique, but there's a lot of these stories out there from the Japanese American community, from the Asian American community, from other immigrant families, other immigrant communities in the US. And I'd love to see more of those stories out in film festivals and reaching audiences, because I mean, it's easy to say now more than ever, but I do think that it's important to remember the history and to remember not to repeat the atrocities of the past, and also how we got through, hardships in the past, like what Brian is saying.
Brian, you mentioned that 3 generations now come to the store, grandparents with their children and their grandchildren. How has the film impacted people coming to the shop and continuing to support you?
Well, Kaia did a wonderful job. Even every time I see it, it brings tears to my eyes. But, I think it's a great story. As you were referring to earlier about camp and stuff, having that out there is a very important thing to me. Um, and I'm sorry, what was your first, the actual original question?
Yeah, the original question was how have you connected to customers as a result of the film? I mean, your fame and fortune has definitely been spread as a result of the
Yeah.
film.
Well, I mean, we have been really fortunate. Like when COVID started in 2020, in 2019 is when we kind of took off. But business has been increasingly getting better back like around 2014, 15, 16, 17. It was gradually getting better. And then COVID hit, and for some reason, the first 2 months were very slow, and we saw customers coming in worried about us, trying to support us. So my wife came home one day and she goes, this lady came in and bought $20, $25 worth of mochi. She gave me $100 bill and she said, keep the change.
Hmm.
And she came home not understanding what was going on. My wife is actually from Japan. And, those are the kind of things that, my customers, because of their generations and generation after experience with us, they were concerned that we were not going to make it through COVID. And believe it or not, COVID, we took off. Our business grew at least 2 to 3 folds during COVID, and it became kind of a comfort place. And when you say comfort food, that was what it was during COVID.
And that's the way people connect to food. I mean, when times are tough, you somehow fall back on things that give you comfort. I mean, that's very special.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that I have this lovely film about Brian, and I'm not the only one. So he has other people making videos and friends and films about him that have gone a bit viral. So that just to say, it's not down to me. It's down to Brian and the store.
Of course, one of the challenges for any traditional product is, trying to also keep up with the times. Um, Brian, what have you done to try to make your mochi and other sweets more contemporary? What are you doing to excite people to come back and try new things?
Sure. About our 100th anniversary is when we came up with the strawberry peanut butter. And it was totally a non cultural item. Basically, it's got the cultural materials, but strawberry mochi with peanut butter kind of clicks. What does that click in your head? Peanut butter and jelly sandwich, correct? Right. So we went on that, and so currently we have like chocolate filled mochi. We have fruit flavored mochi with actual fruit puree put into it. Um, so we have a whole section of non-traditional Japanese mochi, but it's more like a snack style. And then we have our traditional ones that my father and my grandfather made. And then we have our artisans. These are non-typical Japanese mochi that were invented at our store. Like we mix strawberries with the bean paste, and then we put it inside the mochi and we top it off with ganache chocolate. And, that's just a sample of the type of, now that we have 3 different types of mochi that we can offer. So we broaden our customer base with that. And I think that's part of the reason it's been so successful at this point. But it's more interesting that the non-Asian customer base that we have now, which really weren't fond of bean paste probably 20 years, 25 years ago, but they eat it now. It's more acceptable. And when you think about it, it's just that the thought of beans being sweet was kind of odd 25 years ago. And but now, with an open mind, they realize that it's sweet, tastes good.
Foot traffic is so important to the vitality of a business community. How has you being an anchor in Little Tokyo, what has this meant to the rest of the community, having you continue to stay on and knowing that you're going to be there for many more years to come?
Well, especially during COVID, I think we were a really strong draw to Little Tokyo. Um, I think our website was getting more hits than anyone or anything down in Little Tokyo. So we basically were sharing the wealth.
bringing people to Little Tokyo was the main. And, yes, I was the main beneficiary of bringing them to my store, but the whole Little Tokyo community benefited from, seeing people outside and lining up outside my store. I think it invited more people to find out what's going on here. And even though it was COVID time, we had like limits of how many people could come in our store. And that was part of the reason why we had a line, because we only allowed 2 people at a time in our store just to keep my employees safe. But, it's been a really good experience over the last 5 years. I finally felt that is probably one of the biggest helps to the community that I could have done, is gone viral and during a tough time, bring people down to Little Tokyo and feel safe.
So what is your sense of how for the future of Little Tokyo? I mean, you've got the museum, you've got the I believe a new light rail station that's open. So there's more opportunity for people to visit Little Tokyo now.
Well, the light rail hasn't materialized for us really well, although it was a lot of speculation before. But I think Little Tokyo is well on its way of doing well. There's a lot of talk about it being an endangered icon as far as being a cultural center. But, we have their churches here. We have the cultural center and the museum, like you said. And the churches are basically really our anchors, our roots. And even after World War II, that was biggest reason why Little Tokyo restarted here. So as long as we have the churches here and 2 major cultural centers and the museum, I think we're okay. But I've seen it vary over I've been here for 51 years full time. And I've seen it change, and I've seen it change back, and I've seen it change again, and I've seen it change back. This next chapter is going to be a little bit harder. And, I wonder how it's going to affect my son. And when it'll be during his time that we hope that it will do some more transformations, and we'll see. But I feel confident that this community will still stick it together and still hold together and still be identified as a cultural icon.
You underscore the importance of keeping family-owned businesses going. What implication does this have for other Japan towns and other communities? We seem like there are other stores like yours are imperiled today.
Yeah, the one in San Francisco, Benkyodo, they were 5 years younger than us. So they started in 1908. And I was good friends with them. My dad was friends with their father. And I suppose, I don't know for a fact, but I'm sure our grandfathers knew one of them. But when they closed, I think they closed like 2 or 3 years ago, it was quite a hit for that community to lose that business. And so I kind of understand what will happen if we were to ever close. And I have a lot to learn from Ricky and Bobby from San Francisco, because, they did something that was very, very difficult, to shut the doors on a mochi store or any family business that had been going on for over 100 years. It's got to be a very difficult and, mentally straining event to close a business like that.
Kaia, are there other stories like this out there that have caught your attention?
The next film, I seem to have found a little bit of a niche on food and cultural films, food being, as you said, kind of a love language story. Next film I'm working on is actually from the Bay Area. It's a story about mothers and daughters. It's a friend of mine who is an Indian American writer, and she really wanted to make a film about her mother when she became a mother, and how food is her mother's love language, and how does that then translate to her being a mother to a young Indian American, now toddler, but who will grow up. So we're crafting that right now, and it's a different culture but very similar themes, and a really interesting place to explore. So I'm looking forward to sharing that. Hopefully next year we can have it ready.
Brian, do you teach classes at all? Do you try to teach people how to make manju?
I do. I not to just regular people. I teach a summer school program, which is done at the Senshin Buddhist Temple. And it started here in Little Tokyo at the Nishi Honganji Temple. And I teach, it's a summer school program for first grade to sixth grade. And I've been doing it for over 30 years, maybe 35 years. And I'll teach each class, the first two classes, first and second grade, make one thing. And then when they get to third and fourth grade, they make a different thing. And then fifth and sixth grade, they made like that strawberry mochi with the chocolate on top. We did this all the way up until COVID. But after COVID started, then that's pretty much kind of where it ended. But I still take care of just the first and second graders. But back in the day when I first started, it was kind of a way to assure myself that the new generation kids would identify with mochi, because that was probably back in the day when it was times were tough. And I could imagine that I was kind of working to make sure that the new next generation, the generation after that, would continue to know what mochi is and identify with it.
What do you do? We keep hearing about labor shortages these days. What do you do during times of the year when demand is very high for your product? Can you find people to do the work, or how many hours in the day can you work?
Well, first COVID time was really tough. Nobody wanted a job. Everyone's getting paid to stay home. And so I basically had to work 7 days a week and was working 12, 14-hour, 15-hour days. And eventually I ended up getting sick because of it. I did that for a couple of years and I ended up coming down with cancer. And I'm recovered now. But on the other hand, when we get busy during the New Year's rush, we have a group of volunteers that we call Mochi Madness Group. And they come in and they schedule them. We make a schedule because there's so many people that want to be part of it. And so we make 3 shifts of 4 hours, 4-hour shift from 8 to 12, 12 to 4, and 4 to 8 in the morning. And we put it online. It's been going on for about a little over 21 years. And, but we had to limit it because we were getting so many people, we can't fit them in our shop. And so what we do is they have to sign up now. And in one day, when it comes out on the email blast, it fills up in one day. It's unbelievable. And so these folks come in, it's kind of like a mochitsuki. Well, mochitsuki is very traditional as a team effort for the new year. That's why they're pounding that mochi on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. And since you don't see many families really pounding it anymore, so this is kind of a way of being part of the mochitsuki, is they're coming and helping us package it in bags and stuff. And, it's unbelievable. We have close to 50 volunteers that take shifts that come in and help us out packing the mochi. And it just helps us immensely. We wouldn't be able to produce what we do without them.
Now, who are these volunteers? I mean, are they Japanese Americans or are they non-Japanese Americans?
They're everybody. Most of the ones that we have, probably 75% are probably Japanese American. But it's interesting because I've had Nisei Queens from 50 years ago with their daughter and then their granddaughters. And in the intro photo that you see, I think it's myself and Corey with a group of people in front of us. Those are part of the mochi. That's the first shift, 8 to 12 shift. And there are 3 generations represented in that group. And it's just fun. It's great. These guys bring energy to my store, and it keeps us going, even though, we're working almost 24 hours, myself and Corey.
That's really amazing. I mean, that's very, very special to have that kind of teamwork and to bring everybody together, the generations together. That's very special. So what does this mean for the future? Will shops like yours be the future of the food industry? Will there always be a place for you?
It's, I have to say, currently we're into a whole new life cycle. since we took off in 2020 and up to now. I told my son, you know, this is the greatest time for you to come into this because we've never been this busy before in the whole history of our store. And we've actually made other mochi stores busy because of it. And, I don't know if it's a natural thing to see. I think we're pretty a minority as far as how many businesses are even this old. I mean, we started the same year as Ford Motors, and yet we're still a small little mom and pop shop in actuality. But the volume that we're pulling out now is just unbelievable. And we made the transition, and you know, I think my son has a great opportunity to score well here without having to suffer through the business woes. But that's a good thing and a bad, because you go through the bad times, you learn a lot about yourself, and you learn how to keep that store alive. When things are going good, it's not that hard to do.
How far away do your customers come to visit the shop?
Interesting. I'm having, since Kaia's video and a couple other videos, we've been getting international kids that see it on like TikTok and see it on Facebook. And we had some people come from Australia just like about 6 months ago. And the first stop, they were on their way to Disneyland, but their first stop was to our store. And after Kaia's video, I spent a lot of time kids asking if they could take pictures with me. So I'll be in the factory working on stuff, and all of a sudden my workers would come in the back and say, "Hey, Brian, there's somebody who wants to take a picture with you, or know if you could take a picture with them." And I felt like a celebrity for, you know, I swear to God, it was unbelievable for about, I don't know, a year and a half that we keep getting these people from out of state, out of the country, and yet they're targeting our store, especially the kids, and which is just great.
Final question for Kaia. Kaia, what do you think about the impact your film has had globally? I mean, it really has excited people all, you know, far beyond Little Tokyo.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a wonderful journey, and I'm so glad to be on it with Brian. Yeah, it's been, I saw a question, I was just looking through the chat, I saw a question about how many awards, and I have to go back and check. I think it's kind of over 20, I think. So it really has been received well on the kind of festival circuit, and then it's great that it has had a second life with, you know, community groups and organizations like AARP picking it up and doing events like this, because I really want it to be used as a kind of for conversations like this, basically, you know, screen it, have conversations about the culture, about the food, why this is important, why we need to remember these moments and the history, and hold that in our, you know, as we pave a way into the future. So it's been great. I don't even know how many people it's reached, or, you know, I definitely get some of those pictures that Brian, I get pictures texted to me from people that I know saying, I went to the shop and I've got a picture with Brian. And so it's always lovely. And then I've had the opposite. I've had people go to the store and then they see the poster in the store and then they get in touch with me saying, how do I see the film? So, and it's on YouTube. It continues to get wonderful comments on YouTube. So it seems to be still reaching an audience that really cares about this community and about mochigashi. So it's wonderful to see. I think one of the most magical moments, though, Brian, was when we both went to Heart Mountain a couple of years back, and that was the first time that I had screened the film to an audience in person, was at Heart Mountain, because it had done the festival circuit during COVID times. And so we got to be there together for that. And I remember the host at the beginning asking how many people had been to the shop, and half the room raised their hand. So it was really, really meaningful, and I so appreciate how I've been welcomed by the community through all of this.
Well, the impact.
I want to add one more thing for Kaia, which is most people don't know from the video. She put all my voice together. So I do speak, that's my voice, but I don't necessarily speak that well. And Kaia actually cut and pasted everything together to make me sound a lot better. So, I mean, that was part of the work that she did. And unbelievable, when I saw the video myself, I couldn't even believe it was me speaking.
Brian, you were very fluent today. Fantastic job. Thank you both, Kaia and Brian, for being with us. We're going to open to questions now because I know we've had a lot of people submit questions. So we're going to turn things over to Sophie. Sophie?
Yes, a couple of questions. And you addressed the manju making classes, Brian, but do you offer any classes for adults who might want to learn?
I do not. I have done demonstrations for many people. I've done it at the a cherry blossom festival. We actually do a demo, and I make the rainbow dango and stuff there. I do it at Children's Day festivities, but I don't actually teach a class.
Well, there's a demand for
My
it already.
dad actually class
Yeah.
at the church.
Okay, great. A question was, are there new flavors you are hoping to try out in the future?
Well, our newest one is a blueberry bean paste, and now we make a mango mochi, which is very popular. It's just a glob of mochi. It's cut in a square rectangle, no filling, but it's mango flavored, and that one's pretty much taken a dominant role in our showcase.
Very cool. Do you
I
do
haven't had that one
seasonal?
yet. I have to go get that next time.
Yeah. Do you do seasonal mochis or manjus, like things that are only available at certain times of year?
Yeah, believe it or not, that's the traditional part of our, of our business. We make sakura mochi, which is cherry blossom mochi, only February and March. And then April, May, we make kasho mochi, which is used for Boys' Day, which is Cinco de Mayo, or May 5th. And then in the summer months, we convert to a kuzu manju, which is a clear gel over a red bean ball. And it's supposed to resemble like water running over like a brook, running through like a Japanese garden to give you that cool feeling during the summer months. So we have stuck to those traditions, and people wonder, why don't you make it year round? But it keeps it special, and the tradition. And I've criticized another mochi store that was trying to make it year round, and they kind of screwed it all up because then the next Girls' Day came up, and it wasn't so special, and we could feel it.
Just to say that we did, when we shot the film, it was right around Girls' Day. So the sakura mochi is the pink mochi that they're making in the film, and it is delicious.
I'm sorry, the new mochi that we're making now, and it's kind of half seasonal. It's a shohei powdered blue mochi with white ganache chocolate in it, and we only make it during baseball season now.
Show mochi, right?
Show mochi, it's called, and with the number 17 on the label.
I had it for the first time. I was out in California and visited Brian, and it's really good, Brian. I didn't get a chance to tell you. My mom and I both really enjoyed it.
Very cool. We have two questions about the store. What's the address, and do you ship your items out of state?
We're at 315 East 1st Street, zip code 90012. We do not ship directly from our store. We have an online contract or agreement with it's called Japan Super, and they will actually order. You do it online with them, and they will order it from us, and then they will pack it, ice pack it if they need to, and ship it directly out next day air. The shipping is quite expensive though, but that's one way to get it from. You want to get it fresh out of state.
Great. There is one more question about how long is an apprenticeship to study?
Well, in general, in Japan, they consider apprenticeship of 10 years would bring you to be called a shokunin. A shokunin is a professional craftsman label. And yeah, it roughly is about 10 years. You learn the basics. It takes about a year just to learn the basic putting the bean paste inside the mochi. But it does take roughly about 10 years to understand everything around it, and you know, being able to run a sequence of making different items one after the other, because you're prepping, you know, different items well before you finish one. So all the time when we're working, I'm making one thing, but I'm prepping 2 or 3 other things down the line at the same time. And it takes a while to learn that. And basically at 10 years, I feel very comfortable with it. And so I hate to say that to my son, because 10 years is eternity to him, but I think he's going to do it in quicker than 10 years.
Wonderful. We are almost at time here. I'm going to send it back to you, David.
Okay, well, how about an opportunity for final thoughts from both Kaia and Brian? Kaia, why don't you go first?
Final thoughts. Well, I just wish that I lived closer to Fugetsu-Do so I could go hang out with Brian and eat mochi more. But I get back every year or so, and it's yeah, I guess it's just been one of those wonderful things where I didn't quite know why I wanted to make the film, and then now it's probably been about 8, maybe even 10 years later, and I have this great friendship now with Brian and a real connection with the Japanese American community in LA and in California, and it's just been a really special time. So I'm glad I trusted my instincts and went ahead and sent that email to Brian asking if I could come interview him, even though he had no idea who I was.
We've definitely enriched our lives because of your documentary. And Brian, final thoughts?
Well, I mean, I want to give Kaia the utmost credit for what she did. When she contacted me, she was living in New York, and it wasn't an easy communication channel for us to show her things. And I'll tell you the truth, I did not help her that much. And yet she came out with the best video that I've seen done on us. And what she put together was just phenomenal. It brings tears to my eyes every time I watch it. I can't believe it. I even teared up when I watched it today. But I think my family is so gracious to you, Kaia. I think it does the same thing to them. To see that history of what you portrayed in just, 8 minutes, I think it was just fantastic. And as far as the customer base has covered us and supported us all these years, you know, of course, we're gracious for their support. 121 years, you know, we're looking forward to the 125th, because during the 120th, I was not doing well, so we didn't have a celebration. So we're going to save it for the 125th year. And then hopefully my son will get it to like 150 possibly. And that will be some feat.
That's something I think we'll all look forward to. Absolutely.
And I want to
more
thank
milestones
ARP.
ahead.
Yeah, I want to thank ARP for putting this together. And this is fun for me. And along with Kaia, I'll do this anywhere. You know, it's just great and it's fun.
No question. We all learned a lot today. Thank you for sharing your insights and and the history and the joy of all this. Brian, Kaia, thank you so much. Thank you to volunteer MJ Lee, who has been working behind the scenes, and of course to the AARP staff. This program will be posted on AARP's California YouTube channel in about a week, so you can see it again or share it with others who didn't have a chance to join our live broadcast. This concludes today's program. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.